Good day to you, my friends. We are back for another episode, and in this one, we're going to be talking about the nodes, specifically North Node Rahu and South Node Ketu. But before starting, please let me know your experiences with the nodes, whether if they are the eclipses or your general understanding of them. I think we human beings have a particular kind of intelligence because of our cumulative knowledge. So the more that we share, the more that we get a better understanding of what these symbolism means to us, how we're interpreting them as the experiences of our lives. And it's very important to do that when you want to learn astrology anyway. You have to look at a lot of chart, understand the dynamics to understand how things are unfolding. So if you would leave your comments, I would greatly appreciate it. And please remember to like and subscribe. As we all know, the algorithms need to know you exist and you care about this channel, which then allows me to grow this channel, which means it permits me more time to be able to create such content. Unfortunately, we can't stretch the days to 36 hours. I wish we could. But yeah, time bound, so that would help me a lot and I would greatly appreciate it. And without further ado, let us begin with North Node Rahu and South Node Ketu. So I'm going to go to my unconventional description of the nodes in a little bit. I just want to give the general background of what the nodes signify and what their symbolism is and what it is that they're trying to describe. So just that we have a general idea. So one of the primary things to remember about the nodes, both of them, represents instability, chaos, and unpredictability. This is what they are famous for. And as I said earlier, they're not real planet, they're just mathematical points. And even though they're not these tangible planets, they exert immense amount of power. When you look at a chart, yes, you're going to look at where's the ascendant, where's the moon, where's the sun, but you're going to have to pay great attention to the nodes at some point because it's saying a lot about the chart. And one part of their immense power is the force of instability that they can bring. That's what they're indicating. And I'll talk about why they're connected to these kinds of symbolic meanings in a second. But in general, let's just go over what Rahu signifies. Rahu signifies upward motion, outward motion. It's about externalization and it's about forward thrust. That's why Rahu is related to, in terms of time perspective, to the future. And Rahu is about amplification. So whatever it touches, it just makes it super loud. We become very much aware of it as if nothing else exists. It's like putting a magnifying glass on a page and all you can see is that one word that has been magnified. So it captures our attention that way. But in essence, that's exponential bigness, loudness, and amplification is distorting things. So this is the nature of the nodes in general, but Rahu's distorting things by making things disproportionately big relative to other things. So in a lot of ways, it's about overwhelm. And that's forward propulsion and outward movement and upward movement of Rahu is always talking about pushing the boundaries to some unknown territories. It's like you're standing somewhere and at a distance, you can see the horizon. Rahu's representing that which lays right after that horizon. So it's that far out, which also makes it an unknown because we can't decipher it. We can't see it. It's far out. And in a lot of ways, I mean, if we want to orient ourselves to the unknown and what is out there, we become pretty disoriented and confused a lot of times. I mean, like, even if you ask some people, what is your 1-year plan? Vague idea. 2-year plan becomes a little bit more vague. 5, you're really pushing it. What are you going to do? What's your life going to be like in 20 years? You have no idea. There's a sense of confusion. All you have to rely on now is hope. So Rahu, in terms of time, is talking about far out future time. That's what Rahu's constantly trying to push things towards. So in Vedic astrology, Rahu and Saturn are said to be kind of complementary in a lot of ways or have a lot of things in common. And it has to do with this time perspective. So Saturn is putting the bounds and the limits, the limitations of this time. Rahu's kind of pushing that boundary a little further forward and a little bit more forward. So it's about the manifestation of the karmic batches when these two planets come together. It's almost as if Rahu's forcing Saturn to deliver those karmic batches that are supposed to come in time because it's keep pushing it towards the future. And another thing about the disruption of Rahu is that you don't know how to adapt to what you don't know. So this is another reason why it creates a whole lot of confusion. So in general, just in a nutshell, we could say that Rahu represents amplification and distortion. Distortion because of that amplification that it creates. Whereas Ketu, on the other hand, creates detachment, and then through that detachment, it brings a kind of a disintegration of things. So Rahu was trying to push upwards, Ketu's pushing downwards. Rahu's going outwards, Ketu's going inwards. Rahu was about the future, Ketu is going to be about the past. Rahu also has a quality that's considered to be liberal. Neither of these two planets go by the rule. They're both kind of outcasts in some ways, and so they're unconventional in a lot of ways. But Rahu's unconventional way comes out as like being eccentric, whereas Ketu's, let's say, eccentricity comes as in terms of non-engagement and a kind of detachment, because Ketu cannot connect itself to the external facets of the world. It's working on the realm of the interiority, that which is inwards. So it's pulling all kinds of energy inwards, whereas Rahu's pushing that energy outwards. And this is one of the reasons why Ketu, for example, is related to introspection and getting to the subconscious content of your mind and things that are deeply within. And it's also denoting spirituality because, I don't know, this glasses case, it is a material thing, but there's a core essence to this thing. And Rahu is interested in the case itself. And Ketu wants to know, well, what is this case made of? I don't really care about its shell. I want to transcend the shell and to get to the depth and the core essence of what this thing is in existence as part of the nature of existence. So this is one of the differences between the two. And because Ketu's moving inwards and wants to see what's on the inside of that thing, it creates detachment from external facets of life. And Ketu, like if we say Rahu is about amplification, Ketu is going to be about an intensification that's about the internal. It's an internal intensification of things. And you know what? I mean, it's cool to be introspective. It's good to be able to go within. It's good to ponder what is the essence of something. But we're also these human beings who are, for example, social beings. So much of our survival is contingent on our collective effort and on helping each other and being social. So when someone detaches themselves from the social aspect of the world, let's say, or from the external world in general, it can start to neglect those aspects of life. So you start to get a deterioration of the external facets of life, because there's that internal intensification with Ketu. And when I say Ketu brings disintegration, is bringing disintegration of the external facets of our lives, because it's taking our focus, our energy, and the way we move in the world externally and focusing and intensifying them on internal matters. So the external world becomes disintegrated because we're not taking care of it. We're not paying attention to it. Whereas Rahu is putting so much of our attention and energy on the external facet of the world that if we start moving that way and solely move that way, we lose sight of the ways that we need that internal space to also have some sort of a proper configuration so that it makes sense. So both of them, when there's so much focus and concentration on one or the other aspect of it is becoming undone, disintegrated, and that's where a lot of the chaos of it comes from too. So if you want to have a balanced footing on this teeter-totter of Rahu and Ketu, the way that they're sitting in your chart, you have to know how to navigate both ends. How do I exist in the external world as the human, as this manifested form that I am? And how do I remain in touch with my internal self and what's happening within, or even how we want to conceptualize the within of existence, which is talking about its essence, core, and substance, and not just mere appearance. In Vedic astrology, they say Ketu and Mars have a lot of similarities. There are a number of reasons. I won't get to all of them in this video. I really hope that I make a number of videos about the nodes, because I don't think I'll have enough breath and energy to sit here and talk about every single point just to get through some stuff. But like Ketu and Mars have a kind of a similarity, because Mars severs things, right? And it creates, by severing things, you're detaching yourself from certain things. And Ketu also has this quality of detachment, which is in reality severing you from the externality of the world. It's severing your ties with its structures, with its relationships, and all kinds of worldly desires that are out there. It's almost like being drawn into a black hole of the self. You can't exist out there. You can't shine. You can't engage. And again, we like to give Ketu a positive notation in terms of spirituality, because spirituality requires you to go within to get into the depth of what this essence is. But it's not easy. Whoever that's on a spiritual path, they will tell you that it requires a lot of discipline, and it's not easy because the external world is getting annihilated because you can't take care of it. You can't engage with it. You can't lend it your attention anymore. It's hard to keep the order of our daily lives when Ketu's given so much credence and attention. So in a lot of ways, Ketu is about negation of what's external, and this creates a lot of instability. And when we have a lot of instability, we have a lot of insecurity. This is something that's very common with having Ketu as the kind of symbolism it has with our realm of emotions and feelings. We don't feel secure out in the world. And it can leave us feeling very lost and disoriented in a lot of ways, like not knowing how we belong out there. It's like not having a head. Is the dragon's body, right, is without the head. Rahu is the head of the dragon. Ketu is the body of the dragon. So there's a kind of a lack of awareness of being able to position and locate yourself out in the world to know how to act. And as I was saying earlier, Rahu and Ketu are always opposing each other. They're always 180 degrees apart. So it's talking about a dynamic of push and pull at all time, because one's going external, one's going internal. So there's oppositional force to them. And this can also create a lot of feelings of instability, which the nodes signify. And even that fixation that they have with time, it's like having a split mind, having a split attention. Which way do you go? That's the chaotic thing. It's like, do I keep doing what I was doing, or do I try this new thing? They create a chaotic energy within us when we have to negotiate with them. Being grounded is always elusive with the nodes. It's just those words, being grounded with the nodes, should not even be used in the same sentence. I apologize for that. And in general, they're always just disrupting patterns, the existing established patterns. And I'll describe this when we go to a little bit of the mythology of Rahu and Ketu. They are disruptors. They are outcasts. In general, because of this oppositional force at play, where one is about push and one is about pull, in the middle, they're creating a kind of a vacuum. And in this vacuum, which is our realm of experience, we constantly have to reconfigure and readapt to the kind of modes that they're creating. They're creating extreme conditions that we don't even know how to decipher it, but we have to figure it out, because here we are living life. And now just to backtrack a little bit about the characteristic of Rahu and Ketu, we can draw on the Vedic narratives in terms of why they have certain symbolic connections. For example, Rahu and Ketu used to be one entity, and this entity was called Swarbhānu till Vishnu beheaded them. And there was the body of Swarbhānu, which is Ketu, and then the head, which then becomes Rahu. And Vishnu basically throws the body on one side and the head on the other side. And this is how we get the concept of the nodes. So in a sense, by Vishnu throwing him to the edge of the cosmos, one on one end and another one on another end, right off the bat, it's saying about how these entities operate outside traditional boundaries. And when we go a little bit forward in the stories, I mean, Rahu and Ketu are considered the commander of armies, but not any kind of an army, the rebel armies, kind of like mercenaries or practitioners of guerrilla warfare. Everything about the nodes is unconventional. They're rebellious, but they're not rebelling for conventional reasons. They're unconventional to their core, and they're not bound to the established norms. They don't follow rules. Like Rahu represents everything that's exotic and foreign and unknown. So if you have, let's say, Rahu in a house or with a planet that represents marriage, it can represent people that you marry outside of your own culture. So there's a rebelliousness towards, let's say, your own tradition when you have Rahu there. So they're very unconventional. They don't do things like the way the other planets do. And in the mythologies, they're actually outcasts. They're also asuras originally, which we have the devas, they represent the light, and we have the asuras, which represents kind of, let's say, the darkness. I'm not going to call them demons. It's like the yin and yang kind of a situation in the Vedic narratives. And as Swarbhānu, they also were challenging established norms. They were trying to get the nectar of immortality when it got beheaded and it became they, which is Rahu and Ketu. Swarbhānu became Rahu and Ketu. Even prior to becoming Rahu and Ketu, Swarbhānu was defying the rules. Well, actually, he was supposed to get the nectar, but that's a story for another day. We'll talk about it at another time. I'd love to make a number of videos about the nodes because there's so much to say, as I said earlier, too. But the point here is how they function is that they disrupt, defy, and destabilize. That's what the nodes do. And this is one of the reasons why they're considered to be malefic. They're difficult to deal with. They bring a sense of harshness and cruelty to life. Because one of the things that we value the most as human beings is to have a sense of certainty, to know what we're doing, to have some predictability and pattern. We're creatures of habit. Most of the things that we do are out of habit. And these two guys are coming in and really shaking the solid ground beneath our feet. Another thing about Rahu's, we could say Rahu's quality could be described as symbolizing that which is super ambitious, to have a lot of ambitions. There's an expansiveness about Rahu, not a benefic expansiveness like Jupiter, because Jupiter is actually incorporating what is, and from that incorporation is becoming something bigger and more comprehensive and larger. Whereas Rahu's expansiveness is just a kind of an amplification and a loudness. Like you put Sun and Rahu together, it signifies arrogance because it's taking all the qualities of the Sun, and it's just by putting a magnifying glass on it without context, it just feels like there's something pompous and egotistical and big in the room. And in that expansive way, Rahu is very all-consuming. And another thing about the nodes, I should have actually mentioned at the get-go, both of them represent power. And Rahu, as the head of the dragon, where the mouth would be located, and because it's constantly moving outwards, it's about this immense sense of need to take what is out there within to send it back to Ketu, the body, right? So that's why Rahu's been said to represent hunger. And its hunger is usually for power. That's what it's hungry for. We might see it as in like the terms of I want the objects of the world, but essentially what's behind that is that I want that object of the world to have that status. And by having that status, ultimately we're talking about power. And as I've just tried to explain, it's going to bend the rules to be able to attain what it wants out there and to have the kind of power that it wants. Rahu's motto is not, with great power comes great responsibility. It's more like with great power, there should just be more power. Another thing to remember about Rahu's, because it represents the head, we could say it is representing a kind of intelligence too. So it's not just dumb seeking and dumb wanting. There's something strategic about the nature of Rahu and its symbolism. It's calculating, and it's willing to manipulate and deceive in order to achieve its ends. My kitty cat is here. And when we go back to the stories of Swarbhānu, for example, in that narrative, the way that he hides himself or he deceives the gods, he actually sits between the sun and the moon amongst the devas, hoping that he wouldn't get caught. And then the sun and moon got a whiff of, hey, this is not a deva, this is an asura sitting here, this is Swarbhānu. And then they basically told Vishnu, and this is why Vishnu beheaded them. So that thing of deceiving and deception, but as a matter of intelligence, is very much part of Rahu's forte and game. And Rahu's kind of like mercenaries, they go into a place to get that territory, to get what they want to get. But on the other hand, when we come to Ketu's got more of a guerrilla strategy in warfare. It's kind of intangible, elusive, and it's focused on dismantling attachments rather than acquiring external power. It's trying to disarm the opposition. It's sabotaging the opposition. It's like espionage. It's that kind of a tactic that Ketu has. So wherever external power structures have these networks, power networks and connection, Ketu is dismantling them, is creating detachment between, let's say, their intelligence so that they can't put two and two together. Ketu's power is kind of like dissolve and deconstruct. It's got that kind of a power. And Ketu's rebellions against the very fabric of the world and worldly things. And it's always pulling consciousness and awareness and attention inwards. It's a kind of a trickery too, if you think about it. That's what illusionists do, right? They know how to alter. So they'll show you point A and B. The guy has a head, his head has been cut off, but how did it happen? What they're doing is that they're hiding all the steps in between, you know? So this is kind of like what Ketu does. This is Ketu's way of that intelligent deception that it has. And I know a lot of people like to say that Ketu's dumb because it represents the body, but whoever that thinks the body is dumb, they don't know much about the body. So it's actually diverting our attention so we can't pick things up. And this creates instability in life because we need to see the points of how we arrive, like moving down a formula. This is this part, second part, third part. This is how we actually get to the answer. Ketu will hide all of that. So there's the problem, and then you might even have the answer, but it will take you a lifetime to understand how you go from that problem to that answer. That's the kind of distortion that is causing. And you know, that whole imagery of Rahu and Ketu as a dragon chasing its own tail, in a sense, in our own human interpretation, experientially, because that's how we understand the world, it's always talking about some kind of a beginning and an ending, right? The head chasing the tail. That's one of the first interpretations that comes to mind. And in our human minds, without much contemplation, we always think a beginning is a start and then the ending is the end. But with just a little bit of thinking, they are not oppositional forces. They're actually contingencies. They depend on each other. You can't have a beginning without an ending, and you can't have an ending without a beginning. Hence the dragon chasing its own tail, because it never ends. They are actually the same spectrum. They are a sense of continuity that is constant. It's never ending. It's infinite. So in a sense, they're representing not a dichotomy, but a continuity that is the nature of existence itself, which is about being and becoming at all times. We could say existence as an essence has no beginning and end, but the reiteration of itself as that which is existing is always in a state of being and becoming. There's no end to it. And the nodes represent this. So they're representing the cycle of existence, which is coming to existence, sustaining the existence, and then going out of existence. And by going out, then now something new can be regenerated from it. And we can see this in the nodes cycles in terms of how long it takes for them to do a return or to have an opposition. So, and they're denoting that symbolism is denoting this kind of movement from being to becoming. So in some ways, we can say that Rahu and Ketu as these symbols for chaos and instability are in essence catalysts for change, that being that must go through its becoming process. And they're indicating something about the rhythm of existence itself. If the planets are saying about the rhythm of the existing worlds, and we're part of those existing entities, is saying something about the rhythm of our lives. But the nodes are saying something about the rhythm of existence itself. And it's not hard to conceptualize that because all the planets are moving through the secondary motion, so they're moving counterclockwise. These two guys are the only ones that are moving clockwise with the primary motion. They're going completely against the grain, which is also showing that rebellious nature of them too, right? That I was saying that they don't follow rules, they don't follow the norms, they don't follow patterns and habits. They're constantly actually breaking them. But it's almost as if they have their mandate from Vishnu, from some higher power, from that essence of existence, and it's saying something about its rhythmic time. All right, guys, I'm going to take a little short break, have a little bit of hot water, and one of you guys suggested that I have it at a particular degree and temperature with some honey. I have the honey, but I do not know how to get the temperature straight. I have to get one of those thermometer thingies. But I'll be right back and thank you for your advice. I'm back. And while away, I was thinking about the thumbs up and down with this thing. Is it going to give it to me? So yeah, there you go. So if you see random thumbs going up and down, it's just me being my Persian self and using hand gestures a lot. Please don't mind them. They're actually not related to the video. But anyway, let's get on with it. And I guess what we could talk about is just explore just a little bit more why the nodes are so unpredictable. I mean, they're related to the fall and rise of kings and nations, suddenly, sudden events. You can't measure it. It's immeasurable. You don't know. It's just there's this opaqueness to them that you're not sure. What's I mean, it is about the eclipse, opaque darkness, right? But another way that we can look at that symbolically, why they represent unpredictability, is to pay attention to the fact that they don't have a physical form. There are mathematical points. There are some things that are in theory. They don't exist like tangible, material form planets. So it's hard to anticipate a thought, for example, than a person who has a plan with you who's going to knock at your door at 4 o'clock. A lot of times we don't know what the next thought in our head is. It's just boof, it pops up. It doesn't have a form, so we can't anticipate them. So, or their arrival has a suddenness to it, exactly like thoughts. They're also considered shadowy planets. As I was just saying, they're related to the eclipses. They obscure the light. And what is light? I mean, if you're in a room, I turn all the lights off, you can't see anything anymore. Reality gets hidden, it gets obscured, so it creates confusion. And that's why they denote unforeseen factors, for example. And in this way, they're related to being chaotic because we can't foretell, we can't foresee. And I was talking earlier about how they move against the grain of all the other planets because they're moving with the primary motion. It's also saying something about disrupting patterns and rhythm of our lives. Sure, maybe they're indicating something about the pattern and the rhythm of existence itself, but we are moving to a different kind of a rhythm. So it's like as there's a transit and the planets are moving this way, the nodes are going this way, every time there's an intersection, there's a disruption because our flow of time and our patterns getting disrupted by the pattern of something else, the rhythm of something else. We're not accustomed to that rhythm. So these intersections are disrupting our very fabric of understanding and our sense of stability. That's what suddenly destabilizes us. That's why the transits do that. The eclipses do that. So they're kind of acting like a cosmic catalyst for something else. They're gonna alter timelines. They're gonna trigger new ways of thinking, new events. It's almost like the intersection of fate and free will comes into play suddenly. You want to exert your will and go that way, then suddenly it's like a car's crashed to us now. We have to deal with that. Our free will has no power in that moment. So they have this power to completely change our trajectory. So in some ways, they have these karmic implications because we don't have control over that aspect of life. And I don't know, we have to ask ourselves is like, why do we have these markers, these symbols of instability as mode of operation regarding our life and how existence itself is? So they got to have a function. It's just the gods or God itself or existence itself, however way you conceptualize such things. We can't look at it as a trickster or something that's insane. There's an order to the world. There's a pattern to the world. Why have these disruptors in the middle of all of it? And I would argue one of the reasons we could give this is that things are meant to evolve and change. Existence does not operate on the premise of sameness and stagnation. So, for example, ourselves as human beings, we are truly creatures of habit. Even if we think we're not and we look at 99% of our days, we're moving through a very set pattern. We have these ways of thinking. One of the favorite word of our time is I've been triggered. What does that mean? You have pathways that have been solidified in your mind that every time that event comes up, you have the same emotions come up. This is how deeply it's wired in us. And let's say we're always reverting back to the way that we've been patterned. This is the antithesis of what evolution itself is. Evolution demands change, and the nature of existence itself is change. So these two planets are denoting, or could be interpreted as denoting something that's permitting this evolution to occur. So they're breaking down all kinds of stagnation. And it is also this that's bringing the instability, because they break all the established patterns and habits that are entrenched. And habits that become entrenched can become very outdated very quickly. So the survival of the species, for example, demands of it to be adaptable and to adapt to its environment. If it stays rigid and if it doesn't want to change, it's going to die out. So instability in our own lives all the time is forcing us to figure out a new way. How do I do this? How do I adapt? How do I survive? So it's breaking our limitations. And I was saying earlier, Saturn and Rahu have a connection in Vedic astrology, because Saturn represents that rigidity. But existence itself doesn't just want Saturn. That rigidity would destroy it. So when Rahu comes here, it's taking it to that ultimate max of the rigidity and it's saying, okay, push the boundary a little bit further. How do you adapt a little bit more? So it's pushing the horizon a little bit more outwards, which is Rahu, right? So on an individual level, a lot of our evolution throughout a lifetime is to get rid of the old ways of being that no longer serve the current time that we're in and the future time that we're moving towards. The nodes have the ability to do this. Regarding system, this kind of instability that the nodes create demonstrate the vulnerability of a system, for example. They reveal where it is in itself unstable, not stable. So it's exposing the areas that we need to innovate, create, and do something different. So in a lot of ways, the nodes show us our own personal deficiencies and inefficiencies too, in terms of how we need to do things different. That's why we don't like them. They don't come and show us these things in a nice way. It's just very disruptive, and through that disruption we see like we can't survive this moment. We actually don't have the tool in our toolkit to get through it. We got to do something, and that's expanding the horizon. And I'll get to Ketu, how this is contributing to Ketu's process also. And another way we can look at, let's say, especially Rahu, that chaos that it creates and the things that it brings to the forefront and brings it out in the open for us to see. It has a destructive act to it. And all the old patterns that can't be used anymore, they're destroyed. So it's almost like having a new fertile ground where things can grow again. And if you are into Vedic astrology and you're familiar with the nakshatras, we have the nakshatra of Rahu, where the Vimshatri planet is Rahu, right? For Ardra. And this is exactly what the function of Ardra is. And this is why Rahu is so functional in the Ardra. So in some ways, the chaos and the instability, the breaking of old habits opens our eyes to some new perspectives too, even though it's chaotic initially. It's just dismantling all of the comfort zones that we have. And if we get past our habits and patterned ways of being, whether from an individual perspective or a system perspective, we are kind of unearthing hidden potentials that we could not realize or see so long as we were stuck in those patterned ways of being. For example, it's usually through chaos and upheaval in our life where things just completely shift and we feel lost, that we become individually or systemically innovative, as I was saying earlier. We understand what our inner strength and talents are suddenly. It's almost like the crisis comes to refine us eventually. So there's a function there, there's something productive. There's a productive power to existence for having these notations such as the nodes. And that also that rigidity that comes with habits, it doesn't allow us to establish new relational connections. This is super important on a biological level, even on a psychological level. To be able to have greater understanding, we have to make new relational connections and establish those interconnections. But we can't do that if the old way of thinking and those paradigms and the context that we come accustomed to get broken. So the nodes will do this, and that instability that they bring, they force us to connect new dots. We have to learn how to collaborate differently, do things differently. This is all part of that evolutionary process on an individual or a more holistic level. In some ways, we could say Rahu and Ketu are at the service of existence itself, because existence itself is not static, but there's something about its existing entities that become static in their own habits and patterned ways of being. And this disruption is necessary, like as a catalyst to create that change that's necessary to have that evolving being and becoming process. So we can see why they're such a disruptive force and they bring so much instability. They uproot, they disrupt, and then they eventually transform. They're always destabilizing what's known, what's comfortable, what's established, and pushing individuals and system to their brink through chaos and unpredictability. And this is never easy or smooth. That's not what the nodes do, because Rahu's always amplifying external situations and pushing us externally to a point that our effort and our viewpoint is actually kind of distorted, the kind of attention that we give it and the way we chase it. And Ketu simultaneously detaching us from certain aspects of the external world and pulling inwards, just creating this wormhole in the middle. That's where all the occurrences are happening. There's together, they're kind of a dynamic for transformation, and they're inherently destabilizing. Now, I want to take our attention to what I was trying to say earlier, just use a kind of a language that pertains to our time to try to understand what these symbols are trying to describe. And I like to say that we can use the analogy of a download and an upload for Rahu and Ketu. And this is something that I've been writing about for quite a while now, trying to get the language of it right. Let me see if I can do it some justice, actually speaking it out for the first time. Second short break. I'll be right back. And I swear, I was not one of those kids whose favorite class was recess, where I just want to constantly take breaks. It was actually biology. How did I end up in astrology? I don't know. And let's blame it on Rahu and Scorpio. All right, back to the download and the upload of the nodes. Okay, one way to conceptualize Rahu and Ketu is like a cyclical process of uploading and downloading. And let's say, what are they downloading? Let's say the entire world is made of information. So they're always uploading and downloading information. So Ketu functions as a repository of latent potential, kind of like a compressed information, while Rahu's acting as that externalizing force that's decompressing what Ketu holds, the kind of information that Ketu holds. Rahu's decompressing it, Ketu's compressing it. So then it becomes manifest information. Bear with me. I'll try to explain this. I hope I can do it justice. So together, they're creating a kind of a feedback loop at all times. And we can see this. Ketu is the interiority, what's internal, and Rahu's is the exteriority and what is external. And this process, I would argue, has a function because it's refining the information. And it's this that's allowing evolution to occur. It's evolving inherent potential to realized actuality. The inherent potential is going to be Ketu, and the manifestation of it is going to come through Rahu. So we could say Ketu, using our modern language, not past lives, just thinking about it in terms of information. Ketu's compressing it, storing it, accumulating it. That includes all of our experiences, everything that we've ever been, everything that we've ever learned, as a kind of a, let's say, a subconscious pattern. It's that kind of an information. Like, we don't know our subconscious, but it's constantly informing the conscious mind. We have conscious decisions because of the unconscious mind. And it's sending that information as a kind of a pattern to the conscious mind. The conscious mind is decoding it, and then we do the act of choosing, let's say. So it's kind of like the repository of all that has ever been, all that has ever been experienced. A contained blueprint that permits all the expressions of future possibilities to occur. If the information's not there, it cannot be something that can become manifest as a future expression. And we can see an example of this in biology when we take DNA into consideration as an example. And if you're into Vedic astrology, the D12 is about this. And we can look at Ketu as DNA of an organism. Ketu is going to hold all the information that's necessary for that organism to grow and to transform through all its different stages. So what is that information? Is the encoding of the total potential that exists in that organism. And it's just waiting for the right external conditions to be expressed. It's kind of like a distilled information. It's a compressed version of it before it can have a manifest expression of itself. So in a sense, it's holding the essence. It's the essence of what's been mastered, and it's just been codified as that thing's essence. It's just there. Like everything you have ever experienced, everything you have learned now has become a part of you. You know, there's a thing about a blessing with Jupiter and Ketu being conjunct. Why is that? Jupiter represents knowledge, but there's something higher than knowledge, which is wisdom, which is embodied knowledge. And that which you become, that knowledge that becomes embodied in you as your wisdom actually becomes unconscious. It is you now. It's not something that you know. It is actually you. So when Ketu's sitting with Jupiter, is denoting the embodiment of that wisdom, that thing's been entrenched in the person so much that it's just part of their own nature now. It's part of their instinct. They don't have to be conscious of it and recall it to know it. They are it. This is what Ketu's denoting. This is why Ketu and Jupiter have that connotation symbolically. And because Ketu is talking about that essence itself and that thing which is encoded in the self already as the self, and it's talking about potentiality, it doesn't seek self-expression, but it needs something else to externalize it and to express it. In other words, to realize its potential. Another thing, this dormancy of information that Ketu's representing feels inaccessible or fragmented in a lot of ways, and it can even feel static. It needs that other part of the equation, which is Rahu, to animate it, to amplify it, and to externalize it. You know, Ketu, you can think of it in terms of like a black box. It compresses information. Black box is on a plane, so if it crashes, they just have to find the box, and all the information that's been compressed into it, in terms of people's voice, how fast the plane was going, everything that was happening, as a compressed kind of an information, it's in that black box. So now you need another factor to come in to decompress it, to express what's been stored. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of nonsensical, fragmented information of an actual experience or an occurrence. So Ketu's compressing and condensing information, distilling it, making it compact. It's like a symbolic file. So this compression is going to leave all the unnecessary information outside. It's not full of details. It's just the exact, just what it needs to be there is there. So in this way, it can obscure information. It can fossilize information. And then it requires Rahu to decode it, to recontextualize it, and to use it for some external use. So in this way, Rahu becomes a catalyst for expression because Rahu represents that outward force. It's about externalizing. And in this way, it's about realization in a lot of ways too. That information that was compressed into Ketu's realm, Rahu's coming, decompressing that information, and it's expanding it and bringing it out into the world. It's almost like that external catalyst or environment for that DNA sequence to become expressed, not to be latent anymore. If we take what the DNA sequence is in terms of molecules, and then how it gives rise to an I, that's an expression of that gene, of that coding, of that molecule, the sequence of it. We are talking about a kind of a loudness, an amplification, something big. It's like going from that to whatever way we look, which is an expression of that gene. And we can see this like in a conventional way that Rahu and Ketu's functions are described. Ketu represents the past and Rahu represents the future. Past and future are contingent segments and measures of time. You can't have the future without the past, and you can't have the past without the future. What can become in the future is contingent on what has been in the past. So it's almost as if the future is taking some of the information of the past to be able to manifest what it does in the future, which is also by definition what karma is, right? We're talking about actions, we're talking about cause and effect. So we're talking about this contingency. And what is distorting really about the nodes in this sense, if we're going to look at it like information compression and then decompression and expression of it, when it's compressed, we can't discern what it's actually saying. It's like me telling you a story. I'll tell you what I did this morning. I went, I'm leaving a bunch of things out. So it's just nonsensical. And then Rahu, on the other hand, when we think about the translation of that into something out in the world, is talking about a kind of not being able to understand how we got from point A to B. But there is the manifested form. There is the horizon being expanded, pushed further away. So in some ways, Rahu externalizes the latent information of Ketu and is forcing it to engage and come into some sort of a dynamic with the external world. And through this, that gene, that DNA can get expressed. And if we think about it, this cycle is constantly creating a feedback loop, right? So now whatever Ketu does out there, it's being experienced. That experience is being condensed. I mean, like, think about ourselves. We don't remember every minute of our lives, but we have a general idea about what has happened, what's occurred, where we've been. They just become patterns of the mind. That's what it is. And they become patterns of behavior, patterns of thinking, patterns of feeling. That's what the relationship of Rahu and Ketu is. We experience, it's happening in full information and its full spectrum and its full range of colors, like the entire rainbow, see all of it. And then all of that has to be condensed. We can't remember all of it. It's almost like something that's making our existence efficient in a lot of ways. And then when Rahu needs the right information to come into relation with some external aspects of the world, it needs the information from Ketu again to be able to express something. So it's creating a kind of a feedback loop. I know some people talk about how Ketu represents your innate talents, talents that you even bring from past lifetimes. So it's like encoded in you, but you don't have an external expression for it till Rahu can come to a point where it can express that hidden talent, for example. So I'm going to leave it off here right now. But one more thing that just came to my mind. In terms of planetary friendships, it's not like the established planetary friendship, let's say the friendship between Jupiter and Sun, let's say, or Saturn and Venus, but it's been said that Rahu likes Mercury. And what is Mercury's job? Like, Rahu likes to be conjunct Mercury or to be in Mercury's third house. And when we think about these two placements or notations, they're talking about decoding information, right? In some traditions, it's been said that Rahu's exalted in the sign of Gemini. And the relationship between Rahu and Ketu, which is its own body, is about decoding the information of its own body to be able to express what's on its mind. So when it comes into conjunction or into some sort of a connection with Mercury, it gets the power of decoding. That's one of Mercury's symbols. It's our ability to decode, to be able to communicate, and to be able to express. So we can see why this has been said traditionally also. And then just as I said this, I remember Saturn again. And Saturn kind of as like the limit and the bounds at the edge of the solar system. He is also holding all the information at the outer edges and limit of the solar system. He's like a container that's holding everything within itself, within the solar system. Rahu again can take that information from Saturn and it can decode and it can expand the horizon again. Now it's all just like keep coming back. This is why it's not good when you're just free flow talking, because things just like doof, doof, pop into the mind. But again, going back to Ketu and Mars connection, Mars is active assertion that tries to conquer things. It's about acquiring things. And Ketu comes to actually denote that which has already been conquered. That experience in the past has been conquered. It's the flag. Ketu symbolism is a flag. When you put your flag down somewhere, you have conquered it. And Mars has the same quality of conquering. If Mars is in the present conquering, Ketu has already conquered. So it's experiences that have already been claimed. Now we just have the mere information of it, the patterns of it, which is now part of our essence and the core of our being. That's that subconscious aspect of ourselves that we don't have access to, but it's constantly informing the conscious mind. And I think I'll leave it off here. I will come back. I mean, the thing that inspired this talk is because I want to talk about transition of the nodes from Aries to Pisces and from Libra to Virgo, where Rahu North Node is now in Pisces and Ketu South Node is now in Virgo. So I just wanted to maybe warm up my own engine and have a dialogue with you and come back to do that video. And then I wanted that video to be the precursor for the upcoming eclipses coming up. So we'll keep going with these node talks as well, but I'll leave you with that. I hope you're having a beautiful day. Sending you much love. Till next time.